Welcome to Thanks for Visiting, a podcast that's part conversation, part time capsule. I'm your podcast host, Lex. In these minutes and moments, I'm sitting down with people I deeply respect and admire to explore life, the human experience, and the creative spirit. Together, we're creating our visitor records, snapshots of our existence and contributions while we're visiting here on planet Earth. Let's help each other navigate this wild human adventure called life.
When you're going through a life change or when life seems chaotic, one of the great things you can do is control what you can. And one way you can control something is to organize it.
On this episode of Thanks for Visiting, I'm back with Kati Lightholder. In addition to all of the other hats that Kati wears, Kati was a former personal organizer. So I asked her, Kati, can you get my life together? I've got some goals and I don't know how to organize them.
Happy to be here. Would love to help if at all possible. What do you have going on? I can't wait to hear.
I remember you showing me some of your organizational hacks, how to simplify, how to maximize. And I'm at a place in my life where I'm looking back at the past of what I've done and maybe haven't accomplished and looking forward at what I still have left that I want to accomplish. So I'm going through this, not midlife crisis, a little midlife reevaluation period. So I've been writing down my goals, but that's the first part, right? Just writing down our goals is one of the steps, but how do we get there? I believe I remember you having like a Post-it note or note card system that you helped people break down their goals, and you maybe even moved them from one side of a bulletin board or wall to another. So can you get me reaching these goals?
It's going to be so easy. No. So I guess the first thing I'll share is that when you're going through a life change or when life seems chaotic, one of the great things you can do is control what you can. And one way you can control something is to organize it. So I tend to organize a lot.
Sure.
Right now is a chaotic time for a lot of people. Perhaps that statement can always be said, period.
Right.
So when you're talking about a midlife eval, I love that. And I think the board you were referring to, I had at one time up on my wall, like a push pin board with some note cards on it. And Blake, that's my husband, Blake and I were doing like a mission, vision, values for us personally, each individually, and then as a couple. So some of the things you said, Lex, were kind of in the macro. Like you're not looking to, how do I start a website? Number one, go to wix.com. That's more micro. You're thinking macro, like what do I want to do with this next act of my life? I love the idea of a next act and not a second act, because we can have as many acts as we want. So once you identify what you're doing, you can go in so many different directions, but the common thread in all those directions is categories. So we need to figure out what categories resonate with you. Do the categories of mission, vision, and values resonate with you? Or are you like, that feels corporate, that's not quite right. Do I want a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year goal plan? Not even a plan, more just like those could be lists. Like in 5 years, I want to have done this, 10 years, 20 years. Honestly, it's the hardest part, but I think a fun part is figuring out what categories resonate with you. When I would work with my organizing clients, we would work on their physical spaces and their mental places. So we'd work on their clutter in their brain and the clutter in their homes, and they are directly related for some people. And so what we would often do is say they have got 45 things on their mind, and they're all swirling around their mind. At any given point in time, those things pop into their mind and they're like, oh, I don't want to forget to do that. And then they jump to the next thing. And so that thing just goes back up into their mind and goes back into the swirl of things. So instead of all that swirl, We take all those things and one at a time, we put them on a little note card and we put them on a board. You don't have to have anything fancy. If you have a file folder envelope that you can just open up and you can cut up little cards, you can tape them in there. That's like the down and dirty version. So you don't need any special tools, but if you have a push pin board, that could be nice too. So what we would do is, Lex, say you're my client, I would say, okay, what is something on your to-do list? And you would just tell me, and I would write them down and we put them on the board. Write them down, put them on the board. Write them down, put them on the board until there was nothing left that you could even think of. And depending on if it made sense to do so, we might not put them on the board right away. We might set them on a table and categorize them. These are things I want to do now. These are things I want to do in the next month. These are things that would be nice to do eventually. So that, again, categories. Because if we just put 45 cards up on a board, that's going to overwhelm our brain. Our brain's not going to really be able to do much with those. But if you categorize them, you can go, okay, well, the things I want to do eventually, we're going to set those aside. I don't need to focus on those right now. Even the stuff I want to do next month, we'll get to it. Let's take some of the stuff we want to do now.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Thank you. With that said, are there any categories that come to mind for you?
Yeah, let me take a look at some of the stuff I've been writing down. One of the things you said about the different categories, as well as overwhelm, saying too many things. I will have sheets of paper that have just like a brain dump of goals, and then I go, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. So the categories are helpful. I will say for myself, when people say, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? I'm like, panic.
Yes.
I don't have that clear of a vision yet, as well as I'm processing some grief of dreams that have not been fulfilled. I can get overwhelmed by the whole, where do you see yourself in like 5 to 10 years? So I like kind of scaling it back. When I write goals, I tend to do this month that we are in, those goals, maybe 3 months, 6 months, in a year. For some reason, that feels doable. I have a long enough vision of a year. Like, this is where you're trying to go. So then use your 6 months, 3 months, and 1 month goals to actually get there.
I love that. And I just want to say that I can absolutely relate with even the 5 years being overwhelming. I've yet to do that with anybody. I thought that might be where we were heading, but I'm kind of glad it's not, because that's so macro. It's really, you need some deep soul work to just really dig in deep and dream there.
I also just think there's so much we cannot control in life.
Yeah.
We started out saying, like, there's a lot going on in the world and in life right now. And people can probably say that every year, every 5 years, every decade feels like a massive transition. So just think that long term feels like I'm not giving room for the fact that there's so much in the world that can change personally, like on a micro level and macro level. So yeah.
I agree. And there's probably some types of planning that lend themselves better to that, like financial planning, for example.
Yeah.
Am I right? Did you say 3, 6, and 12 months? Were those the categories?
Yeah, as well as 1 month.
1, 3, 6, 12. Got it.
Then you also asked about categories, and I had looked at a bunch of my notes in my phone. So I took a lot of my notes of goals that I had set and tried to organize those, and it brought up categories like creative work and legacy. So that would involve things like my music goals, the podcast goals, writing. And then the second was family, love, and home. The third was health and well-being. The fourth was adventure and growth goals. So that would include wanting to learn another language, traveling, some of those other fun pieces. Like, it even includes, for me, I want to restore a vintage car at some point, and I want to really upgrade my wardrobe at some point. And then the fifth was service and social impact. So that's the part of me that really wants to leave a positive impact currently, as well as like a legacy. A lot of my heart is with our young folks and mental health advocacy around depression and anxiety. So those are these little life pillars that came up within the themes of my goals.
Those are beautiful. So I can already see the chart in my head. All the categories you had would go on the left side. Then you'd have very thick columns to the right, and it's a 1 month column, a 3 month, a 6 month, a 12-month column. Okay, so if we start with creative work / legacy, you listed music, podcast, and writing. Are those the three, or are there any more in that category? Because I think now's the time to get finite subcategories.
I think those would be the main ones.
And that's good, because that's plenty. You listed a lot of things, so this might end up being an overwhelming list, and you might have a future.
I've heard it referred to like now goals versus later goals.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Okay, so I can see the chart. On the left-hand side, you have the categories of creative work, relationship, health and well-being, but underneath those are your subcategories. So under creative work, you have music as a line, podcast, and writing. And let's just stop there, because it's going to get a little bit hard to remember everything if we get too deep.
Sure.
So if those are on the left-hand side, then on the top, you have the 1 month, 3 month, 6, 12, and later. And you've got thick columns below all those. And then you would go, okay, let's start music. Do I have any 1 month goals for music? And then you just write them all out. Write as many as you want and start with a verb. So I trained with these awesome folks that developed a system called compression planning. And the founder and his son were always big on, when you're writing out things you need to do, you start with a verb. So example. So if you just wrote down venues, you might be confused when you come back to the card. Are you researching venues? Are you visiting venues? Are you calling venues? Are you going online to see what venues are out of state, in state? So you want to start with a verb. So can you think of any as an example right now for you?
Yeah, I have several songs that I want to release this year. I like this idea of starting with the verb. I often will say like, release this song, but then there's so many steps before that to do that. It's like, record the song, mix the song, master the song.
So I love that you mentioned that, because this can trip people up. But what I found that my clients have liked in the past was, you don't have to get so micro in your tasks that you're saying, turn on my computer, open up GarageBand, or wherever you record. I'm not saying you record there. But what you could do is those categories you just listed of, everything is a category to me. Those were not categories. Those were things you were going to do. So tell me them again. I'm going to write them down. Well, you have to write, or are they all written?
They're all written. So yeah, if I want to release a song, leading up to releasing the song, if it is my electronic stuff, it's usually like record vocals. If it is acoustic stuff, it's record guitar, record vocals. And then it's mixing that. Then it's mastering that. And it's also create cover art for that. I would say those are like the necessities to actually releasing it. The cherry on top is maybe a music video or things like that, which in general I struggle with the social media component with my art, but yeah.
Okay, so those would be this is how I would write those cards down. So the cards are going to do two things. They're going to make it so that you know what you're doing, but they're also going to be little trophies of success once you're done. And you can do one of two things. And we'll see what,
I like that part.
We'll see what camp we think. I don't know which camp you're going to be in here, but my clients always fell into one of two categories. People that want to take that card off the board, rip it up and throw it away. And people that want to take that card off the board and put it into an envelope so they can sort through it later and say, look at all the things I did, and they want to save them. Which do you think is you?
The latter one, the saving them, or I'd want to put them in a column of like accomplished.
Yep, you could do that too. Okay, I love it. Yeah, a lot of people, I would say most people fall into that category. I'm the other way. I want to take it off, throw it away. Take it off, throw it away.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But no, they're both valid. So here's what I would put down for you for each song. So 1, record as one card. 2, mix the song. 3, master the song. 4, create cover art for the song. And then bonus, music video, which could have its own board. And so you said you had like how many songs?
Probably 8.
Wow. Okay. Amazing.
I've been enjoying releasing singles that then I release as an EP or album.
I love that. So you could decide if you wanted to say record song number 1 and then all these things, mix song number 1, master song number 1, create cover art song number 1, and then another set, record song number 2, mix number 2, master number 2, and then all the way through 8. And you'll have a board full of those, but every time you get one of those things done, you get to move it to your other column.
I like that. A little tangent to that. If people have financial goals, what you're discussing was really helpful because when I had graduated from college and it was time to pay my college loans, I struggled with the fact of like going online, paying your bill, typing in the amount, hitting send or pay, and then it just vanishes. And it felt like I was throwing money into the wind. And it felt very depressing because it was like spending money and you don't have any physical thing to show you what you just spent your money on. You had a physical diploma, but no one's looking at that as they're paying their college loan. So what I did is a chart, and I put every month, and then I put the monthly that I owed. If it was January, I would say this is the balance, and then once I pay the amount owed, this is what I had left. And so every time I paid, I would fill out that chart and look at it as a way to see, look at what you are accomplishing and look at that number that you owe now and how it's going down. It helped me a ton to not feel like I'm just throwing money into a void.
How creative, and I love that. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah. If anyone has debt and you're paying stuff off, I really recommend it. Otherwise, it can feel really defeating. As you're working towards your goal, you're doing a very positive action, but you can feel really defeated.
Even when you're paying something off, like we recently paid something off that took us years, and Blake called me up to his office and he's like, I'm going to click the button. And I was like, there should definitely be confetti that shoots out on these like loan pages or whatever when you pay something off, but it doesn't. So we just had to celebrate on our own.
Yes.
Yeah, paying something off is a huge deal.
Yeah. I like this point of rewarding yourself when you hit a goal. Can you repeat that part?
Yeah, I mean, really what you're doing is getting a hit of dopamine. And so you can either, for you, you're going to choose to take it out of the to-do column and you're going to put it in the done column or whatever you call that, completed, finished, whatever column. And if you're me, you're taking that card off the board, you're ripping it up and you're throwing it away. And either way, you're getting that dopamine hit. It's whatever you prefer.
When you're helping people organize or goal set, do you ever add an additional factor of celebration or reward?
I think the folks that I was working with just didn't have that need, but it's such a great idea. If incentivizing yourself actually works for you, do it. And it'll be as unique as you are. Something I'm working on is eating breakfast as soon as I wake up, eating between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So I'm not doing extreme intermittent fasting, but I'm giving my body time to digest before I go to sleep so that my body can work on healing itself while I'm sleeping instead of digesting food. This is just something I learned from my nutritional therapist yesterday, so I'm jazzed about it. So if I use that as an example, say I mark on my calendar a check mark every day that I'm able to do that, eat between the hours of 7 and 7. And then at the end of the month, if I've gotten every day, maybe I'm allowed to go buy a new top.
Sure. Treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Just an example of something that you could do. But it's as unique as the people who want to do it are. It's whatever your preference would be.
That example makes me think if someone had a goal to like kind of cut back on their spending, maybe they were a shopaholic, and if their goal was to kind of cut back on some of that, if they did that consistently, a reward could be get yourself something nice under set amount of dollars.
Yeah, or if the dollars are your issue, your reward can be in another direction. Maybe consider a reward in another area that's not an issue for you. You know, if you have any issues, maybe consider that.
Cool. Thank you for touching on that reward center part. And can I say one more thing about the verb thing? I like what you said about starting your goal written with a verb, because I've heard other schools of thought that say it like I will, or say it like you're doing it now, or say it that you're doing it in the future. And when I write those, I have to be honest, they don't hit the same. Especially if it's like I will, I'm like, Well, that's perpetually in the future. It actually doesn't make me feel like I'm called to action.
I'm glad you brought that up because I have a thought on that. In my opinion, we're talking about two different things. So I'm talking about a task, and tasks should always start with verbs. And I think when I've ever heard of the theory you're mentioning, it's more about bigger goals. Here's an example. I am articulate. So that's not a task. I'm not going to go and do articulate. I'm not going to go do that. But if I read that statement, I am articulate, those folks are claiming that's going to do something good in your brain. They might be right. I'm not positive. I kind of like it. But if being articulate was a goal of mine, I would be writing some steps out that start with verbs. Research communication people on Instagram, or read public speaking books, or sign up for a public speaking course. Like, these aren't the greatest tasks in the world, I'm just off the cuff here, but so that's
Sure.
where I see the difference between a task and like a bigger goal. So a goal is going to have a bunch of tasks under it. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. It makes me think of the mission, vision, values you're talking about, those being good to be starting with I or I am, affirmations or affirming who you are trying to be or affirming your vision. But when you're talking about the tasks, it is a task, so it requires action. I like that a lot. That really helps me, quite honestly, categorize these different things.
Isn't it all about categories? I feel like the world is a bunch of categories.
Yeah.
So the people that theorize that if you put your goals into statements like you've already done them or you already are them, that is very along the same lines as vision boards. And so if you had come and said, yeah, I want to stick to the 5, 10, 15-year goals, I might suggest you to make a vision board. And I'll just review very briefly the reason behind why they can be powerful. I like to use the example of, say I wanted to get into stand-up comedy. If I wanted to do that on my vision board, I would put a picture of that traditional comedic brick wall with the microphone and the spotlight. And maybe I would put a picture of myself in there as well, like in front of that brick wall. And I would just look at that frequently. I would think about what it might feel like to be up there, etc. So the more you look at it, your brain doesn't really know the difference between experiences and pictures. I think that's right. If anybody knows that that's wrong, please tell me otherwise, but that's what I have read.
I've heard something similar. It doesn't differentiate between if you've actually done the task.
Yeah, which seems a little bonkers to me. But the theory is that when I get up there for the first time to do stand-up comedy in front of that brick wall with the microphone, my brain's going to be like, oh yeah, we've done this 100 times. And you're going to be maybe less nervous, more confident. There's going to be some benefits to it. So when you say, I am articulate, well, it's not a visual, but I'm sure that still connects to something in your brain that's similar to vision boards. So I'm for it. I like it.
Yes, this also might be a little tangent as well, but have you heard this idea of when you are thinking about your goals, thinking about how it would make you feel? When you're writing down your goals, how would that make you feel? And how that informs what you're really after. You're after that feeling.
Oh my goodness.
So if you're saying, if you're like, I want a big mansion in Malibu, and it's like, why? What would that make you feel? And you're like, I'd feel successful, or I'd feel safe, or I'd feel like I am better than everyone else. And it's like, ooh, okay, well, let's maybe dissect that part. Why do you need to feel that way? Why do you want to feel that way? Or even just the fact if you're like, for me, having a home is a goal. Okay, why? What would that make you feel? I want a home that's restful, where I can have guests stay, where it feels like people walk in and they can breathe and relax. And so that feeling of like, I want to be able to provide a restful space. One, cool. Now you know the feeling or what is at the root of that goal. And also, how can I do that now? While I'm on the way to meeting that goal, can I do that now?
You know what word comes to mind? And tell me if this resonates with you. Like, I guess technically I should ask you, well, why do you want that house? Why do you want to be able to have people? Is it connection?
Yeah, connection, community is a big one. I had a wonderful early childhood. I had a view of that I really like and would like to continue. If you listen to like my backlog of songs, there's such this theme of home. And one of them is like, I want to build my own home. That's separate from my childhood home.
I like it.
Yes, that community, connection, family. And then there was a couple from our church that talked about how they would have pizza Sundays, and it makes me want to cry. They would open up their home to the kids in the neighborhood. Anyone in the neighborhood, come over every Sunday. We've got pizza. They even let parents in the community know, like, our home is a safe place for kids whose parents were maybe going through a divorce or something really difficult. They had an extra room where they could take someone in. And so I think maybe that's like an aspect. As someone who rents, you can't just open up your house to anyone. It's often in the contracts. So I think there's a freedom that comes from having your own home, a bit of that more control of what you allow in. The fact that you can paint the walls without having to ask someone for permission. So there's a community aspect, a freedom aspect.
Those are basically your two values, but the one is love, right?
Love and freedom. Yeah, good point.
Oh, girl,
Yeah.
I love it.
And so you got me thinking about goals. I think there's a lot of layers to it. It's important. It can be a very emotional inner study.
I love the direction that you've taken us into not only thinking about your goals and your tasks, but the why behind them. That is so powerful, and I'm just thankful you brought that up. I was recently thinking about that stuff myself, and sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes it's a little bit vague, and you need some time to marinate with it.
I agree. I think sometimes we don't ask ourselves why. You know, you could be writing down your goals, and then if you say, like, well, why do I want this? I think there's maybe some folks out there that are like, well, because my parents told me this is kind of the path I should take. I want to be a doctor. Why? Well, because my mom was a doctor, or I come from a family of doctors. Why do you want to perform live? Like, some people want attention, and that's okay. I'm not judging that. But maybe there's some healing that needs to happen there too. I just had a recent therapy session about how I shrank, like how I never pursued some of my music goals because I would always say I don't want the attention, but that's because I took the back seat in a lot of areas in my life. And that kind of made me like cry, thinking like, have I shrank my goals because of some areas that are unhealed? So I think asking why is really important.
It's so powerful. Yeah, just thank you for taking this in that direction. It's just so much more interesting than just cards on boards.
All that said, do you know how to get us back to where we were in terms of the organizing? We had some columns. We had like the pillars, and we had 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, 1 year.
Yeah. Now, when we get beyond that, we get into specifics that might be less conducive to a podcast setting. But what I will say is, say you do this exercise, Lex, and you write down all your categories with all the subcategories, and then the columns to the right that are the time columns, 1, 3, 6, 12 months, and a later column. You fill all of that in. If there's a ton of stuff, you might want to then transition that board, not completely, but partially, to a secondary board. So you would do this however you like. Either pluck the cards off the board or take a highlighter or something and mark the ones that you're like, if I only got to do 5 of these, pick a number that feels good. Let's say 5. If I only got to do 5 of these, which 5 would I do? Pluck those off the board, put them over on a clean board or a clean folder, whatever you're using, and look at them and say, can I take this card and do it, or do I need to write some more micro steps down? Because that's how my brain works. It works different for everybody. Maybe you can take the card that says, record song number 1. Maybe you can take that and go do it. Or maybe you want to write down some additional steps. And maybe you want to put this stuff in order. Priority order would be the next board. So sometimes you want to do it by importance. Sometimes you want to do it by low-hanging fruit because maybe you don't want to do any of them. And you want to get that dopamine started. So you do the easiest thing first. You just have to assess your situation and see what fits.
What you're talking about on priority, I think, is really key too. There's an organization, Luma Workplace, and they have human-centered design. It's based on creating solutions for problems and questions. And so what you're talking about with the importance, it makes me think of one of their tools is the importance versus difficulty matrix. So on the vertical axis, it's the potential difficulty, and on the horizontal axis, it's importance, and it's a way that you can prioritize. It's split into 4 quadrants, and so one of the quadrants ends up being this low-hanging fruit, what you're talking about. It's like not maybe the most important, and it's not the hardest, just like get it done. And then there's stuff where it's like it's not very difficult to do, and it's very important. That is great. Then there's like the stuff that's not that important, it's quite difficult. You want to be operating there the least amount of time, right? And then there's the aspect it's difficult, but it's important. So you do still want to pay attention to it.
That is a great one. For anybody that's not scared by a matrix, that's a good one. I think they're scary at first, but once you dive into them and like let your brain go, it's okay, take a second to understand what this is, they're really interesting.
That's why I like your idea with the postcards or even like Post-it notes, because you can move them around. I think that's really helpful. And as much as we're talking about like a physical wall, I do know that some people like to operate on the digital plane and they can organize it.
It can work really well digitally, especially with like Mural or a similar tool like that. And I just have to speak up because you said Post-its. In my compression planning training, we were always taught Post-its will fall because they will. So if you're going to do Post-its, you got to add like a push pin or you got to add tape or something to them so they don't fall off the wall.
Great point. And you don't want your dreams to fall on the ground.
And there you've had it. Mic drop. We're done.
Don't use Post-it notes. This episode is sponsored by note cards, not Post-its.
That's so good.
Okay, so prioritizing, and you might need to break down your goals. You might need to take a postcard from your goals and bring it into a clean slate place.
It's almost like the first board is like your big brain dump. You figure out your categories, you get everything down, you put them in place, and then choose 5. Move them over to a clean board and figure out your priority. Do you want a quick dopamine hit, therefore put the quickest stuff, as number 1? Or do you want to do the hardest, most important thing first? Or maybe the most important thing isn't the hardest. You figure out what the right priority is for you, and then you go from there.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
So I will leave you with 2 things. One is if you feel like you're fighting a never-ending battle with this type of stuff, try to celebrate every win along the way. So even small accomplishments can release that feel-good chemical dopamine. When I organize a drawer, I will go and get my husband and bring him to the drawer and be like, look at what I did. Celebrate this with me. So don't underestimate how celebrating with a friend or somebody can help expand the dopamine, expand the excitement, even for the small things. And organizing, whether physical or mental, it is a never-ending task. So that just means more victories to celebrate. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insight. And I look forward to celebrating some of these victories with you.
Heck yeah, same here. Thank you so much for listening and being interested.
Thanks for visiting.
Thank you.